Hello guys and welcome to a new video. If you're new here, my name is Eli Mwenda. I'm a menswear fashion and lifestyle blogger, and I guess the video today falls into that lifestyle section because, as you can tell from the title, I'm going to be talking about how it was for me growing up in the UK. So first things first, how did this video come about? Because most people here that follow me are from Kenya, so I'm sure you follow this lady. She's a fantastic blogger called Joy Kendi, and she recently made a video talking about her experience growing up in the US, and somebody tagged me in that video and said, Eli, you should do a UK version. And I was like, So I put it on my story. I was like, guys, do you want to see a UK version? And you guys were like, yeah. And Joy was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I should make a video. So I was going to do this last week, but I've traveled and I'm actually now in Nairobi. Hence the slightly different echoey sound you can hear from previous videos. And also occasionally you might hear some knocking from the apartments being built like opposite, and also outside there, because we're in apartments, other people have their apartments too, so there's corridor noise occasionally, but we'll see how we get on. To give some context, my family moved to the UK when I was around 2 to 3 weeks old. I was literally a baby. So when I'm saying growing up in the UK, for me it was just growing up. It wasn't like I knew something and then I moved somewhere else and realised I'm growing up differently to how I was before. The UK for me has just always been just my reality, and I've known nothing different. I'm going to tell you about it and hopefully it's interesting for some people. So yeah, as I mentioned, we moved as a very young family. My brother was 5 years old at the time, I was a few weeks, and I always commend immigrant parents because for you to pack up your bags and everything you know and just bounce and start a new life somewhere else, especially like with my parents with literally a newborn and a 5-year-old, you have to be a different type of beast to do that. So I'm always blown away just the amount of guts that kind of move takes. So any immigrant parent or anyone that's ever emigrated or done like a huge shift, I have to say, like it takes a lot to do that. So the reason for our move to London was because my dad was doing his master's degree, I believe, at the time, and because he was going to university there, the whole family moved over there. So he was at uni, working odd jobs as well. So our family at that time, we were never like well off, like we were just baseline. So we just lived in a flat. It was nothing glamorous. Peckham wasn't an expensive or affluent area. It was kind of rough actually, but we were only there for a few years while he finished his studies, and the only memory I have of Peckham is the hallway in our flat and also death. Now that sounds a bit dramatic, but the only thing I remember is my brother's teacher, English teacher, dying, and also seeing someone die right outside our apartments. I'll briefly go into the story of the guy dying. So I was coming back from playgroup or whatever, I must have been like nursery or something. My brother was coming back from school, so it would have been around 3:30, 4 p.m. And this guy was walking on the side of the road and walking on the pavement as well. He was drunk at that time, so a car came, literally hit him, he went up in the air, flipped a few times, smashed back down on the windscreen, and he was a goner. So that's Peckham, that was that. I laugh, it's really dark, but that's my only memory. So then after Peckham, he graduates, he gets a job, so we move up to Oxfordshire, into a small town in Oxfordshire called Banbury. So here we realised basically we were the only black family just in the whole town. Just literally there was no other black people for a good few years of us living there. We stayed there from when I was young. I did all of my schooling there up until the last year of secondary school or high school, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's talk about the town first. The town, only black people, but this is the thing. My parents growing up, they just sheltered us from that fact. Like I knew you could see you look different, right? But I never knew it was a thing. Like I had no idea that there was this thing about there was a being black, or I knew there was a place called Africa, and I knew there was a place called Kenya. I knew that's where we're from, but I didn't know the context, the history, anything about it. It was just, I was just a kid. Like you're just a kid. You just notice occasionally when you go to your friend's house that it smells different, they act different, and their food is different. That's the only things that I realised were different about me. The biggest shock for me was when I wanted to have the same hairstyle as everyone else, right? So David Beckham at that point had a quiff, like literally one that just like an Elvis type thing, right? Just goes up, and all my friends could get gel and do it up. But I could never do it because obviously I had different hair, right? And this is the first time I got frustrated, like, why can't I just do a quiff like my friends? Like, what's going on? Why do I have this hair? That was my first realization that, okay, you're like completely different to everyone else, like, you're different. But I still tried to do it. I still just used to get my fingers, push it up, but by the end of the day, it would have just shrunk back down. So I gave up on the quiff and realized I was black. So that was my first time I realized I am different to everybody else in this town and school. So that would have been around the end of primary school. All through primary school, I was just in a bubble. No idea. There's literally nothing to say about that. I just was a normal kid, just growing up. Secondary school, the first time that blackness or me being in a different country sort of came up is when I would have been early year 7, right? So second year of secondary school, or year 8. So second or first year of secondary school. I got into my first fight and the N-bomb was dropped for the first time. So basically, we're throwing this kid's shoe around. To be fair, we were bullying him, which wasn't good, but I was sat there on just chilling, talking to my friends, and then the shoe came over, so naturally I caught it and I was like, what are we doing? And they're like, throw the shoe, and I was like, okay, cool. But before I could throw it, the kid jumps on me, we have a scrap, and then it's just like a normal scrap, and then he calls me the N-word, right? And I just flipped. I was like, I didn't know it was so loaded, but I just knew how I felt when I heard it, right? So yeah, he called me the N-word, I literally flipped, just destroyed the kid, like pummeled him. And I didn't really know why. I just knew that word had triggered me. So I think it must have subconsciously, I knew that it was bad. I didn't know to the extent, but yeah, I got like suspended, but within school. So I don't know what that even is. You just have to stay in a certain classroom. That incident is when my parents sort of had the talk, so to speak. So that's when they started telling me, you're a black kid in a white place, so you have to act a certain way. And it sort of now started to click why we always had to look pristine. Like my mum would never have us ever not looking like 100%, like our clothes had to be on point, because she knew that we are setting the bar for black people in this town, right? So there was that weight on them, and I didn't realize that now by acting up and fighting this kid that sort of, I was representative of every black experience they're ever gonna have of seeing a black kid. So they were like, yeah, you have to work twice as hard. And that really annoyed me because I was like, why? Like, no, I don't. Like, everyone works how they work. Like, this is ridiculous. And I can't get into the same amount of trouble that other kids could, right? So I thought that was just my parents being my parents. So other things that I realized that we had to do is we could never, ever, ever, on the back of the whole, being the first black people and setting the bar, we could never borrow money from anyone. Like, I was never allowed to borrow money or even take food from my friend's house and bring it home, because they were like, no, and I know now because they didn't want us to look like, black people trying to ask for money or ask for food and stuff. So they were like, you never borrow money, you never get food from your friend's house. And they were just generally strict on us going over, and sleepovers were just a no. So that was my experience, but I just thought my parents were strict. I didn't think why, right? I started to realize my parents are very different to other people, because I'd go to my friends' houses, I'd see the way, and I think Joy touched on this in her video, you'd see the way they talk to their parents, and you get startled, right? But do you know what I used to think? I used to just think this is because we're Christian. I thought the only reason my parents are strict, we don't swear and stuff, is because we're Christian. So I'd go to their houses and they would firstly be asked what you want for dinner, which for me was a whole weird concept, that they say, what do you want for tea? And I was like, don't you just eat what's on the table? Like I used to get so confused, and I realized their diet was different. There was a lot of pizza, a lot of pasta, that sort of thing. So I loved it, going to my friend's house, I absolutely loved it. So that was my sort of early secondary school experience. I realized that like my elocution and how I spoke and stuff like that, my parents were very heavy on, so I couldn't say water. I had to say water. Like I had to, because I think they were trying to give me the best version of England, or be the best version of a immigrant in England that you could be. And that was by us moving out of London, that was by us living in this town that was not the same as, our black peers, so to speak. Socially, like I said, there was no difference to me than anyone else that I felt anyway. It was just, I just played sports so I can get up the social ladder. I was a pretty popular kid, and I realized I bounced a lot around social groups, so I could hang with the rugby kids, I could hang with the football kids. So that was my social currency, sport. So I never really experienced this kind of discrimination or anything because I was just Eli or Illy or at that time. So I was just me. I wasn't like the black kid, right? At this point, everyone was just naive. We were in our early teens. No instance had come up apart from that fight. And there was one other fight where me and my brother got into one with some other kids because they started calling him Mowgli from the Jungle Book, and my brother got angry because he's older than me, so he knew what that meant. We had to fight these kids. So that was the only other time that being black got us into like issues or anything. So yeah, that was basically secondary school. So where it starts to change, and when there's just a huge crow flying past. So now when it started to change was when I moved to Kent. This was now at the very end of my secondary school, so the last year, midway through, my dad got a good job up in Kent, so we had to move. Yeah, I moved now, I'm about 15 years old. Yeah, I'm around 15. So up until this point, my life has just been a bubble, right? Growing up in the UK wasn't a thing because I was just in a white bubble, I didn't realise. So when I started to now experience the whole being an African or being black was when I did move to Kent. And this is because now obviously the kids that I was hanging around with, they're older, they're more exposed, now they know, which means now, in turn, I know, right? So when we first moved, we moved to a place called Sevenoaks, which was quite an affluent area. This was a small town again. In our first few weeks there, me and my brother were like, okay, we need to go and meet people our age, right? So we went to the local park, cricket ground actually, it was that kind of town. Went to the local cricket ground and we just walked up to some boys and were like, hey, how's it going? Sports is a social currency, right? So I was like, you play football? Yeah, cool, let's play some football. And then they were like, do you want to come out later? Go get changed, come out later, we're going to just chill in the evening. It was summertime, so yeah, of course. So we go home, get changed, come back, and they've got beers and stuff. And obviously, I'm now like 16, we're underage, but these kids have got beers. And I'm like, okay, I don't drink because I'm young and my parents are Christian, all of this. But these kids are drinking beers. We're like, okay, we'll chill with you, but we're not going to have any of your alcohol, right? Because we're too young. And then while we're sat there, some police come past, right? And basically, everyone starts to sprint because they're underage. So everyone drops their cans and stuff and just sprints in different directions. So me and my brother were like, oh yeah, we should run. So me, my brother, and these one or two other kids, we run, and everyone else just splits all around the town, right? After a few hours of hiding, chilling, giggling about how funny this was, bear in mind we've done nothing, we've just turned up and there's beers. So as we're walking home, me and my brother get stopped by a police officer, and he's like, well, you guys were with these other guys drinking and stuff. We're like, no, we've not been drinking, but we ran because everyone else ran. And it was like, right, okay, well, I'm going to need to take your names, I'm going to need to write up an incident report. And I'm like, we didn't know, even though we did nothing, we had to write our names and put all this stuff and it get logged up, right? Which I knew was weird because we'd done nothing. There was beers, but we had no alcohol in us or anything, but they needed our names and stuff. When we realised how messed up it was is when we spoke to everyone else the next day and they were like, oh yeah, then we saw the police. I was like, oh, did you guys get a slip and like an incident report? And they were like, no, all they did is ask where those two black boys went. So we were like, what? So they were like, yeah, they were just looking for you guys. So the two kids, me and my brother, that hadn't drank, were the ones they were looking for, the ones that got incident reports. And that's when I was like, light bulb, I'm black. And that's when I started to notice that I was different, because now going into shops and stuff, I've noticed I was looked at more. And I realized that people had a perception of me, whereas before I had no idea that this was a thing. So yeah, now I'm in my teens and I'm starting to notice things. I go to shops, people look at me for longer, security follows me, and now, it's starting to register, you're a black kid in a white world, right? Also as well, while I was living in Sevenoaks, I went to a school about 20 minutes away. The first day I went, I was put in the library to just wait while they organised my classes and things, and word got round that there had been a black kid that had started there. There was about 4 other black people, but they were all mixed race. And so I was the first black kid that was there. And I remember being in the library and people came in like I was an exhibit to come and see the new black kid. That was weird, but I didn't know how weird it was. And then, so when I now started talking to people, they were like, oh, you're from London? Because you have to remember, the only place people thought black people were from is London. because that's where most black people like resided. So I was like, no, I'm from Oxfordshire. And they were like, no, you're not. That's ridiculous. No, you can't be, basically. And I remember my accent was different. Some of the words they said, I had no idea what it was. So yeah, that was my school experience there. But all I did there was just use sport again for my social currency. So when it was lunch, I just played football. I remember some kids just had an irrational hate for me when I was playing football. They tried to completely destroy me. And it was the really rough kids that didn't like me, because obviously the kind of household they came from, I'm guessing they had a negative perception of black kids, because yeah, playing sports sometimes, there was like a few kids I remember that just hated me. Maybe because I was good, and but that wouldn't have, like, there was other good kids that were white and they didn't try to attack them as much as me. It was only recently I've realised that was really weird, like how much hatred he had for me. But in general, made loads of friends there. That's where I met the triplets. That's where I met some of my best friends. So that was cool. So I was there till my sixth form, right? And then I got decent grades. So then I changed school again, very last minute, and now I went to a grammar school. It was filled with like posh kids. So yeah, racial banter became a thing, and I remember things like sentences starting with, no offense, Eli, but you know you're black. Does that mean this and this and this? Or, no offense, Eli, but you know you're black. What is your pubic hair like? Is it like everyone else's? Or why is your nose like different? Or you look like, and then put in any black person's name ever there. And I remember I used to feel really uncomfortable with it, right? And I always look back and I'm like, I wish I had like the knowledge and stuff now, because what I used to do is, because I hate the situations where I was made to feel different by talking like, but it always qualified as banter, right? So I used to hate these situations. I was really uncomfortable, but how I handled it then was I used to just laugh it off as banter and be like, nah, shut up, mate. Nah, cool. That's how I handled it. Nah, shut up. And then we'll start talking about something else. But it was a constant thing. Like, and I just remember the feeling of it was just like here we go again, because it's the same jokes over and over. And this was annoying because it was still like some of my close friends still making these jokes and stuff. So yeah, I remember I had to be the spokesperson on any black issue, and I didn't want to be. I just wanted to be like a kid, like I was back then. I just wanted to be a normal one of everyone else. So all I remember is I tried to just avoid anything to do with blackness being in this new school. That's all I really remember. Also, when I got there, I remember there was like an irrational love from some girls from me, and I think it was purely that whole, there's a new kid and there's a new black kid, and some girls were really into black kids. So I remember that used to be like a thing, like when I get home I'd get those messages, but then when we're in school they wouldn't really talk to me, which used to be really bizarre. So I think they just like the excitement of talking to a black boy. I then started really getting into like drama and stuff like that. And I remember I played Santa, which for one of my teachers was very ironic because I was black. So I remember in front of everyone in the audience, he was one of the, I think hosting it or something, and he was like, oh, so we've got a black Santa this year, that's progressive, or that's different or something. And like everyone laughing, and I remember being like, why can't Santa be black? Like, that was another instant where I remember being black was a thing. I remember as well when I was doing drama and things like that, I finally got to do the role of Simba, which was incredible. And when he was commenting on it and stuff, he said something like, that's more like it. So that was that one teacher in school that was just a bit weird about me being a black kid. So that's sort of been my experience up until uni. There's quite a few black girls in there. That was fun. That's when I started, integrating with people that looked like me and stuff like that. So that was really healthy. Made some good friends there. So yeah, that's the first time I started like interacting and like being happy to be black, because I had other people that were black, right? So yeah, going to uni was really good because for once I wasn't the only one or the token one, so to speak. So uni was a bit of an eye-opener, and then after uni is when I was like, I had a crazy interest now into what being black meant, or, Africa or Kenya. And so yeah, literally the last 3-4 years, it's just been me just learning about blackness, so to speak, because yeah, back then in school and everything growing up, I'd never taken an interest to it, and it was only until secondaries in school and stuff like that that I realised it was a thing. So if I was to summarise it, I would say that I've always grown up in a bit of a bubble in terms of blackness. And so very recently now, up to date now, coming to Kenya and stuff like that is very much part of this whole process of me just learning more about my history and where I'm from. And I've been so proud of like actually being black and I don't want to be in a bubble. I completely disregard that. And so yeah, it's only the last few years that I've learned about myself, read up on myself, not wanted to, you know, just blend in. Like, it's only now through internet, through books, through reading, that I think I'm in the best place ever, where it's my favorite thing in the world right now is to be a black person. And looking back, it's crazy to think that I wanted that bubble, and it's crazy to think that I wanted to always avoid the topic of blackness. So yeah, that's sort of been my experience growing up. That's very individual to me, purely because of the environments and the places I sort of lived in. If my parents were to tell you about their experience, I'm sure it's very different because they're obviously adults at that stage. But to summarize, my growing up in the UK has just been a bubble. So yeah, that's basically been my experience growing up in the UK. For me, it's been normal, but for other people, it would be like, that's a bit weird that you're in a bubble all your life. But yeah, that was my reality. So happy I'm out of the bubble, and so happy that I'm actually in Nairobi and that I'm learning about myself, and that for the first time, it feels amazing to be black. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope it's been entertaining. If you like the video, then show me and press the like button. Also subscribe, and if you don't already, follow me on Instagram. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.